Welcome to Steph's Garage Jewelry. So we are going to be making the Francesca necklace and bracelet, and this is a really fun project, and it looks more complicated than it is. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to do a few things. We're going to be doing 3 bezel for the necklace and 3 bezel rivolis for the bracelet. Each of these bezels are SS39 Swarvoskis. And again, I'll keep a description of supplies and what I use in the description. From there, we're going to be making our frame and attaching our bezels. Then I will show you how to do the rope for the necklace, and then I'll show you how to do the rope for the bracelet. They're similar but slightly different, and so we'll do that. And in this project, you can actually substitute these bezels for, in the Francesca series, I show you how to do 4 peyote bezels. And we do the simple, okay, where it's just a peyote bezel. We do the sun, which has a stitch in the ditch. We do the blossom, where I use both crystals and delicas in between my stitches in the ditch, so it brings it in closer, creating more of a opening of a flower. And then we do the star bezel like here, and that's where we do the stitch in the ditch and then we add the crystals all the way around. And it's up to you which bezel you want to do. Today I'm going to show you how to do the star, but I will have a link for all of them in the description. So I have done videos for each of those. So I've shown you how to do a simple bezel for the SS39, the bezel we call sun, which is the stitch in the ditch for the SS39, and then there is the blossom where it has the crystals and additional delicas, and then we have the one here which I'll be doing today. But there is a video out separately just for the star. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our materials. For this, we're going to need our 11-0 delicas, and our 11-0 delicas are 15-0 delicas are 15-0 rounds, and then our 1.5 by 2 millimeter crystals. All right, so meet me back here and we'll get started. All right, so what you're going to want to do is on your thread, you want a wingspan, so from one arm to the other arm, and then 1/3 down, you'll go ahead and put on your stop bead if you're using a stop bead, and then add 20 11-0 delicas. All right, and we're just going to create a circle. All right, and you can go through just the first one, but I recently discovered that I kind of like going through the first 2 or 3. It just seems to work a little bit better and create a little bit more stable circle. It's up to you. Either way works. It really does, because we're going to be reinforcing and so forth, so don't sweat it too much. All right, so we create our circle. All right, and we're just doing our basic peyote stitch, which we've done a few times now, so I'm going to go a little faster than usual. So I'm coming out of here, I'm going to pick up 11-0, set it on top of here, and then go through the next one. There we go. And let me get a little closer so that way we can make sure people can see. All right. All right. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up 11-0, which will sit on top of here, and I'll go through the very next one. There we go. There we go. And on this little one, I tend to like keeping it flat. Depending on the size and what I'm doing, it may vary. So I'm picking up 11-0 delica. I'm coming out of here. I'm going to set my 11-0 delica that I picked up on top of here and go through the next one. Alright. There we go. Voila. And I do that all the way around. Once I'm done, I make sure I go through this very first 11-0 delica that I added. Go through there, and then meet me back here, and we'll start with our 15-0 delicas, okay? Alright, so now that I've gone all the way around, what I like to do before I get started with my 15-0 delicas is I like to shape my, I like to shape my bezel. So I'm just going to take a pencil or pen, and you just set it on here, and you just slide it on, and you just go all the way around. There we go. I'm just going to do that. Alright, so what we're going to do is for the first round of 15-0s, we're going to use delicas, okay? And what we're going to do is we are just going to go ahead, pick up our delica. We're coming out of this sticking out 11-0. We are going to have our 15-0 delica sit right here in the notch, okay? And then we're just going to go through that next 11-0 delica sticking out. There we go. And don't worry about getting things too tight. Things will tighten up later on when we do our reinforcement. Alright, and if you want, you can take it off. I just find that this bezel is a little small for my fingers. Everyone's different. You probably have smaller fingers than me. I have chubby fingers, and that's just the way it is. So you just do that, and you go all the way around like that. Okay. Do one more. And when you go through all the way around, make sure you end up having your thread come out of this 11-0 delica that you first put on. So go all the way around, meet me back here. We'll switch to our 15-0 rounds, and then we'll finish up the front side, okay? Alright, and actually I've actually got it started just by accident. There we go. So what we're going to do, so I'm coming out of this 15-0 delica. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 round, and then this 15-0 round is going to sit on top of this little notch where the 11-0 delica is, and I'm just going to go through that next 15-0 delica, which is sticking out like this. And I'm just going to do that all the way around, and I just give a nice gentle tug. Make sure things are sitting correctly. And then I'm just going to do that again. So I'm coming out of this 15-0 delica. I'm picking up a 15-0 round. It's going to sit on top of this 11-0 delica, which is creating a little notch. And I'm going to go through the 15-0 delica, which is sticking out. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. And once you're done, what you want to do is make sure you go through, after you finish putting all your 15-0 rounds, go through this 15-0 delica and then this 15-0 round. Meet me back here, and we'll do exactly what we did with on the front with the back. The only difference is we'll add our stone, okay? So meet me back here, and we'll get started on the back. Alright, so just like the front, we're going to do the 15-0 delicas first. I'm coming out of this 11-0 delica sticking out. I switched to my tail of my thread, so I put the needle on there. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. It's going to sit on top of this little notch where the 11-0 delica is, and I'm just going to go through the next sticking out 11-0 delica. And I'm going to put on about 3 or 4 of these 15-0 delicas first, and I just do gentle tugs. You don't want to tug too hard before I pop in my stone. And just a reminder, you don't have to do this, but it is recommended just to protect the backing of the stone. It doesn't hurt to put a little bit of clear fingernail polish on and let it dry. I've already done that with my stone, So I am already set to go. There we go. And this will be the third one. Again, it's just like what we did in the front. The only difference is we're going to be adding our stone here in just a moment. Alright. There we go. And let's go ahead, do one more. And then we'll go ahead and pop in that stone. There we go. Alright, so now we have the stone in, and we'll just keep doing what we were doing before all the way around, and then just like with the front, we'll do the 15-0 rounds on the next round. So there we go. So go all the way around, and again you want to make sure you end up going through that very first 15-0. Okay, and then meet me back here, and we'll 15-0 delica, so make sure you go through that again. Meet me back here, and we'll get started on our 15-0 rounds. Okay. Alright, so just like before, I'm coming out of this 15-0 delica just like the front. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 round seed bead. It's going to sit on top of this 11-0 delica, which is in this little notch, and I'm just going to go through that 15-0 delica, which is sticking out just like this. And then I'm just going to make sure everything sits in the center, and I'm just going to go all the way around, and once I'm done, I'm going to go through this 15-0 delica and this 15-0 round one last time. Okay, then meet me back here, we'll do our reinforcement and then get started on our stitch in the ditch. Okay. Alright, so we are going to reinforce the back, the middle, and then the front. So what I like to do with the back on these SS39s is I'll do this for like one or two of them, but where you have the 15-0 round near the 11-0 delica, if I'm coming out of the 15 round, I'll go through the 11-0 delica like this, and then I'll go back through that 15-0 round. And then for the majority of the back, all I do for reinforcement, I only do that for one or two on these little small ones. The bigger ones, I will do something a little bit more. But I'll just go through the 11-0 delicas and the 15-0s again for the reinforcement. So let me do that one more time. So I'm coming, hold on Izzy, I'm going through the 15-0 delica and the 15-0 round, and I just go like that, and I go all the way around, and I use my front end of my thread to kind of keep track of where I'm at. Alright, so go ahead and do that and meet me back here, and we'll do the center. Okay. Alright, so we are going to reinforce the back, the middle, and then the front. So what I like to do with the back on these SS39s is I'll do this for like one or two of them, but where you have the 15-0 round near the 11-0 delica, if I'm coming out of the 15 round, I'll go through the 11-0 delica like this, and then I'll go back through that 15-0 round. And then for the majority of the back, all I do for reinforcement, I only do that for one or two on these little small ones. The bigger ones, I will do something a little bit more. But I'll just go through the 11-0 delicas and the 15-0s again for the reinforcement. So let me do that one more time. So I'm coming, hold on Izzy, I'm going through the 15-0 delica and the 15-0 round, and I just go like that, and I go all the way around, and I use my front end of my thread to kind of keep track of where I'm at. Alright, so go ahead and do that and meet me back here and we'll do the center, okay? Alright, and with the center, since with the 11 Delicas, I consider that the spine. And on here you have the two 11 Delicas side by side, and then the very center you have just the one. And what I like to do is I like to take the two side by side, come out of one, go through the other, and then back up through the one. There we go. And what that does is it creates a little hug, and they just pull together and they sit very nicely that way. And then I just go through the very center and I repeat. So I'll go through one side, then I'll go on the other one, go through the other, making sure my thread doesn't get caught, and then back through the same one that I was coming out of. And I just do that all the way around, and I use my threads to, like my front thread, to determine how and when I've gone all the way around. Alright, so go ahead and do that. Then go ahead and reinforce the front just like you did with the back. Meet me back here and we'll get started on our stitch in the ditch. Alright, so now we're ready to do our stitch in the ditch. And if you want to go ahead and end your tail, you can go ahead and do so. Just make sure that you've weaved in and out several times before doing so. Alright, so now I'm working with my front thread. I reinforced the back, the center, and the front. And what you want to do is you want to weave it so that you're coming out of the 11 Delicas where you have two of them, and you want to be coming out of the one that is closest to the front. Okay? So right now I'm coming out of here, and what you're going to do is you just pick up one 11 Delica and then go right back through. Okay? There we go. And what that will do is that will sit right on top of this 11 Delica. Just like that. And then go ahead, reinforce that. And then go right back through that 11 Delica that we were coming out of to begin with. Then you're going to weave, and I recommend weaving through your 11 Delicas because you have more room. So I'm just going to go through the center, and I'm going to maneuver so that I wind up, make sure my thread doesn't get caught on anything, at the very front of the 11 Delica where there's two, one side by side, and I'm going to come out of the one closest to the crystal itself. And we're just going to repeat what we just did. So now I'm picking up a 11 Delica, going through the 11 Delica I'm coming out of. Just like that. And then I just go ahead and reinforce that stitch. Just like that. And you do that all the way around. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I weave to the next spot. I go through the very center of the spine in the 11 Delica. Whoops. Pulled that out of my hand. Sorry about that. Alright. And then I just make my way to the 11 Delicas where we have two of them side by side. Pick up 11 Delica. I'll show you one more time. Go back through the 11 Delica I'm coming out of. There we go. And reinforce. Alright, so go ahead and do that all the way around. And then meet me back here, and then we'll add our crystals. Alright, so now that we've finished our stitches in the ditch, all we need to do is add our crystals. And so all you're going to do is you're going to pick up a crystal. You want to make sure you are coming out of the top part of the stitch in the ditch. So you want to come out of the stitch in the ditch, coming out right here. I'm just going to go through to the next stitch in the ditch. and put on a crystal in between. So I'm coming out of one stitch in the ditch, I pick up a crystal, and I go through the next stitch in the ditch. There we go. So you want to do that all the way around. Then you want to go around once and reinforce, and then go ahead and go around a third time and put in, I would say, 3 to 4 half knots. And then meet us back here and we'll get started on the frame of our necklace or a bracelet, depending on which one you're doing. So go ahead, meet us back here, and we'll get going. And you want to do a total of 3. So you want to do 3 bezels, and that's if you're doing this the star bezel. If you're doing any of the others, the simple or the sun or the blossom, go ahead, I will have the links, so go ahead and do those if you want to do those instead. You will need a total of 3 for the necklace, and 3 for the bracelet, and if you're doing both you'll need a total of 6. And then meet us back here and we'll go ahead and continue, okay? Alright, now that we've completed our 3 bezel rivolis, we're ready to go ahead and start creating our frame, okay? So let's take a quick look at that. So what's interesting about this is that the frame itself is basically 4 rectangles connected. And these aren't squares, they're rectangles. So that just means that they have 4 90-degree turns, and that they're not necessarily the same length in all directions. So if we take a look here in comparison to the width and the length and the width aren't necessarily the same. So if we take a look at our first square, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 units going lengthwise this way. And then for widthwise we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 going this way, 4 going this way. So when we get started, we're going to go ahead and get started with the width, and we're going to make 5 units, okay? So go ahead and grab your 11-0C beads. Okay, let's get started by making our, you need 4 to get started for making your first wall. And just to avoid confusion, I am going to refer to the right angle weave unit as a wall and the cubic right angle weave unit as a unit, just to avoid confusion for this project. Okay, so grab 4 11-0C beads. Okay, we're going to create a circle, and we're just going to go through all 4 of those beads a second time. So we're going to reinforce. Once we've done that, go ahead and go through that very first bead, which will create a little circle for our first wall. There we go. So we got our first wall, our right angle weave, and what we're going to do is we're just going to maneuver down to, and just to help clarify, I'm going to consider this kind of like a clock face, and this is going to be 12 o'clock. This is going to be 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and maneuver down to 3 o'clock. Alright, I like to work off of 3 o'clock for my right angle weave. From there, I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 more beads for the second wall. Okay, so I got my first wall. There we go. I'm coming out of 3 o'clock. I'm going to go through 3 o'clock again. There we go. I got out of camera frame, so let me just redo that. Alright, so I picked up 3 beads. Let me move my project out of the way so I have room. Alright, so I'm coming out at 3 o'clock. I picked up 3 beads. I go through 3 o'clock again. I have my second wall. I'm just going to go ahead and reinforce 1 bead at a time. There we go. And then I go through that 3 o'clock, which became my 9 o'clock for the second wall. There we go. And for the third wall, I'm just going to go ahead, follow the thread path of the right angle weave, which is just a circle, and maneuver my way to 3 o'clock. And 3 o'clock will become 9 o'clock of my third unit. So I just need to go ahead, pick up 3, because this is my very first unit of the right angle weave, cubic right angle weave we're making. So I'm coming out of 9 o'clock for the third wall. And I'm going to go back through that 9 o'clock. There we go. Now that I have my third wall on, I'm going to go ahead, reinforce that stitch. So it's easier to reinforce now than later on. And it creates that stability that we like with cubic right angle weave. And we go back through 9 o'clock. Now we want to maneuver back to 3 o'clock for this unit of our third wall. I shouldn't say unit, I mean our third wall. Okay. There we go. So now we have 3 units on. Alright, so we have our 3 walls. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold this so that way the last wall and the first wall and the last wall basically are across from one another. Okay? And they will be part of our final wall. So let's go ahead, fold this in half. Have the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock meet each other. Okay. So the 3 o'clock of the last wall I put on is right here. And the 9 o'clock of the first wall I put on is over here. And so we're just missing 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Okay? So depending on which direction your thread is, which way you're going to go, because you always want to follow your thread direction. And we're just going to create that natural circle of the right angle weave. So I'm coming out of 3 o'clock, going in this direction here. So I pick up 6 o'clock. I'm going to go through 9 o'clock to help create that circle. And then I'm going to pick up 12 o'clock and then go in through 3 o'clock. Just creating that circle of the right angle weave, because that's all a right angle weave unit is. It's just a circle. So we went ahead, we did that. Now we're just going to go ahead and reinforce everything. And since this is our very first unit, we will then at least go through the floor and the ceiling and reinforce that as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the floor. Actually, let me go have the other direction be the floor. There we go. But I'm facing this way. Alright. So this is going to be my floor, and the way I know that is I will have 4 beads already there, prepared to go in a circle, but there is no thread attaching those particular 4 beads, other than they're connected to the 4 walls. They're not connected to each other, but to their individual wall. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through all 4 of those beads in a right angle weave. So I'm just gonna go in a circle. Whoops, there we go. To create that floor. There we go. For the first unit. Go ahead, do a little tug. Now that I've reinforced the floor, all I need to do is reinforce the ceiling. Okay, so I'm just gonna follow my pathway that I had previously for the right angle weave. There we go. And I'm gonna maneuver to the ceiling. And the ceiling is gonna be just like the floor. I'm gonna have 4 beads there. They're gonna be connected to their individual wall, but they're not gonna be connected to each other yet. Not until I do that reinforcement. So I'm gonna go ahead, reinforce them. There we go. And now we have our very first unit, okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and do our second unit together. So what we're going to want to do, let me get a little closer, is we're just going to use the ceiling here as our floor for the second unit. So each of these beads here will be a wall, a 6 o'clock for each of the respective walls. Okay, so for the very first wall of the second unit, I just need 3 beads since I have 6 o'clock. Okay, the direction of my thread will determine the direction of the right angle weave. So I'm going to go in through the opposite side of that 6 o'clock to create a circle. So I have my first wall. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce that. Now, when I want to do for this particular case is I always want to end at 6 o'clock. So for this unit, I'm going to make sure before I move on to the next wall, I am coming out of 6 o'clock. So I'll create my first right angle weave, make sure I'm coming out of 6 o'clock, then I'll reinforce, make sure I'm coming out of 6 o'clock, and then I'll move on to the next 6 o'clock. So I just reinforced. So here's my first wall of the second unit. I've turned it so it's facing me. So I'm looking at the next 6 o'clock. I maneuver to that 6 o'clock. And because of the direction I'm going, I have 3 o'clock and I have 6 o'clock. Some of you may have 9 o'clock. Just depends on which direction your thread is going. Alright, so I'm going to pick up my 9 o'clock and my 12 o'clock. I'm coming out of 6 o'clock. So I'm gonna then maneuver through 3 o'clock, just like you would for a circle. And I want to wind up coming out of 6 o'clock, so I'll wrap that up. So that's my first right angle weave. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce that one bead at a time, following the thread path and making sure I wind up at coming out of 6 o'clock. So now I'm going through 6 o'clock. I'm turning my unit around to look at the next 6 o'clock. So this will be my third wall. Let me just hold this. There we go. I go through that 6 o'clock. And just like my previous wall, I have 3 o'clock and I have 6 o'clock. I'm coming out of 6, so I'm going to pick up 9 and 12, go through 3 o'clock, making sure I end up by going through 6 o'clock. Oh, okay. I scared myself for a moment there. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and reinforce by making sure I go through 12 o'clock. I'm sorry, through 6 o'clock. And because I have my tail here, I'm just going to be careful that I don't catch on that. There we go. Make sure I'm in frame. So now I'm going through 6 o'clock, and that was my reinforcement stitch. So I'm going to turn my unit, and this is my final wall, and I'm going to go through 6 o'clock. And for my final wall, I'll have 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, missing 12, and have 3 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead, go through 9 o'clock because of the direction of my thread. For some of you, that would be 3 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. I'm going to pick up my 12 o'clock and go through 3 o'clock because of the direction of my thread. And then I'm going to go through 6 o'clock. That's the first time I went around. So I'm going to go ahead, go around a second time, making sure I wind up at 6 o'clock for my second unit. There we go. So now I'm going through 6 o'clock. That was my reinforcement, so I'm ready for the next step, which is to reinforce the ceiling. So I come up here, just like before. We don't have to worry about the floor since we used the first unit as our floor. We just have to go around and reinforce. Now it doesn't matter which direction you go in. It will determine though how your right angle weave units for the wall will go up. And that's why some of you would have had 3 o'clock versus 9 o'clock and vice versa. So now we're ready to build our third unit. So we just needed a total, just a refresher. We needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units for our width. So go ahead, build 3 more units, a total of 5. Don't forget to reinforce the ceiling once you're done. Meet me back here. We'll do our first right angle weave turn and go from there. Thank you guys. Hi everyone. So as we continue to work on our frame, we've gotten our first side done. And this is the side where there is a total of 5, and that's the width going in this direction here. So what we need to do is we need to turn and do a 90-degree turn, and we're going to be doing 4 units in the 90-degree angle, with counting this last unit as our first unit, okay? So let's go ahead and get our things together and let's do our 90-degree turn. Alright, so we have our first side that is completed, and this side is actually part of this frame right here. So that's 5 units going in this direction. Now we're going to go 4 units in this direction, counting this first unit right here as part of our side unit. Okay, so we're going to do our 90-degree turn. And when we do a 90-degree turn, we are going to be coming out of one of these 4 beads off to the side of that very last unit. So I'm just going to get a little, I'm going to turn this over and get a little closer so you can see. There we go. So these 4 beads, and it's just like we've practiced and just like our other units, these 4 beads will become the floor of our next unit, okay? And they will represent the 6 o'clock for each of the 4 walls. And what I like to do, and I don't always do this, sometimes I forget to do it, but what I do like to do, and I do recommend doing because it will make your life just a little bit easier, is maneuver your thread and needle so you're coming out of this 6 o'clock, okay? And the reason why I recommend that is that it's easier to access that at the very beginning than towards the end. It's not the end of the world. You can most likely still do it, but the smaller the beads you're working with, the harder it becomes. So it's just a good practice to try to get into. Again, not the end of the world. All right, so we are currently coming out of this 6 o'clock, and I'm going to build my first wall for my 90-degree angle. So keep in mind, I'm working off the side of the wall to create a 90-degree angle. So I pick up 3 beads because I have my 6 o'clocks. I just need my 9 o'clock, my 12 o'clock, and my 3 o'clock. And I go through that 6 o'clock again. So I have my 3 beads. I'm going through the 6 o'clock. There we go. And you always want to make sure you're ending up going through 6 o'clock again. So I'm coming out of 6 o'clock, and I do recommend reinforcing just like we did before. This is all going to be the same. So I'm just going to go through each bead one at a time. And that will allow me to reinforce it. Whoops. What you want to do, and it, just, it's not the end of the world, but try to, and the more thread passes you have, the harder this will become. But as much as possible, you want your needle to go through cleanly, in other words, not catching on any other threads, through your bead. Alright, so now that I've reinforced and I am coming out of 6 o'clock, okay, for that first wall, I'm just going to turn my piece so I, to make it comfortable for me to work with, as comfortable as I can be with the camera. I'm going to turn it so that I have easy access to this next 6 o'clock. And it's just like building a unit like we did before. Alright, so in this particular case, because when we build our wall, we're doing the right angle weave, which is just a circular motion. Okay, that's what a right angle weave is. We have 3 o'clock and we have 6 o'clock. My thread is coming out of 6 o'clock in this direction, so I will pick up 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. I'll go through 3 o'clock, so I'm just following the direction of the thread and moving in a circular fashion. Then I go through 6 o'clock. And that is my first pass. So all I need to do at this point is go ahead and reinforce it. Make sure that I am coming out of 6 o'clock when I finish. There we go. There. So that was 9 o'clock. This is 12 o'clock. This is 3 o'clock. And this is going to be 6 o'clock. So I just give it a nice gentle tug. Okay, so that's my second wall. I turn my piece. Now I follow the pathway to the 6 o'clock for the third wall. And reinforcing really gives it that nice structure. So then I go ahead, I go into 3 o'clock, just like we did with the second wall. And then I go through and wind up through 6 o'clock, and that will create my first wall. Okay, I'm not my first wall, but my first pass through the third wall. I then go through 9 o'clock for reinforcement. Then I go through 12 o'clock for reinforcement. Then I go through 3 o'clock for reinforcement. And I'm going to make sure I wind up coming through 6 o'clock for the final reinforcement of that wall. Do a nice gentle tug. Then I turn it for my fourth and final wall. And just like with all of our other units, in this particular case, we have, I'm going to maneuver through 6 o'clock so I don't get myself confused. We have 6 o'clock, we have 9 o'clock, and we have 3 o'clock. We're just missing 12. So I'm just going to follow the path, the direction of my thread. And my thread is having me go through 9 o'clock first. You know, I'm just going to, that's just the way it works. You know, it's either clockwise or counterclockwise. Then I pick up 12. Then I go through 3 o'clock. And then I go through 6 o'clock. So I always want to wind up coming out of 6 o'clock. There we go. Then I go through 9 o'clock again. I mean, it's repetitive, that's beading for you. Then we go through 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, wind up at 6 o'clock. But that's the beauty of beading because it's very relaxing. Alright, so now we're coming out of 6 o'clock. I just need to maneuver my way to the ceiling and reinforce that. So I went through 9 o'clock to get to the ceiling. Here's my ceiling now. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go clockwise with this. Just like we did before. There we go. Make sure I come out of the same bead I started off with. So now if we look at this, we have our first side over here. That's 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we count the 12 o'clocks. And then over here, because we'll maneuver this, so this becomes our 12 o'clocks here, we have 1, 2 units, and we need a total of 4 units. So we just need to add 2 more units, okay? Meet me back here, and we'll do another 90-degree turn. Alright, so we have our second side on. So our first side is 5 units, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our second side is 4 units, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want to do a 90-degree turn, and I want to make sure that the third side is parallel to the first side. So to be able to do that, my 90-degree turn is going to have to be going in the same direction as the first wall. So I've maneuvered my so that means that these 4 beads here are going to be the base of my next unit for my 90-degree turn that will be parallel to this first side. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this, and I'll get a little closer so you can see. And just like we did before with our previous 90-degree turn, I have my thread coming out of the inner 6 o'clock where the first wall is going to be built, because I find that doing the inner wall first just makes it 100 times easier, okay? Just like before. So I will use these 4 beads as the base of my unit to start the 90-degree turn, okay? So we're just going to do this together, and I'm going to pick up, because I have 6 o'clock, just like with our typical first wall, we need 3 beads. I'm going to go a little quicker since we did do this already, and this is just a repeat of before. And I came out of 6 o'clock. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to reinforce each bead one at a time. And making sure at the very end I come out of 6 o'clock. Now I'm going to follow the direction of my thread, okay, and my thread is going counterclockwise, so I just maneuver it to the next 6 o'clock since I just finished reinforcing that first wall. Now I'm going to prepare to build the second wall. So I'm preparing to build my second wall, and on my second wall I have 6 o'clock and I have 9 o'clock. So let's go ahead. We picked up 2 beads. We're going through 9 o'clock, making sure we wind up at 6 o'clock. And reinforce. And if you haven't done cubic right angle weave and you would like to practice, I do have a video out which goes over practicing, including how to do a right angle weave, a 90-degree turn with a second 90-degree turn that's parallel. Alright, so now that we have reinforced, again I'm just going to follow the thread path, the direction of the thread, which is counterclockwise in this case. I'm going to go through the third 6 o'clock, and I'll attach a link to that to this video. Alright, so I'm coming out of 6, I have 9 o'clock, so I'm just going to pick up my 2 beads. Again, I'm going a little quicker since we've already done this a few times already. There we go, coming out of 6, taking the time to go ahead and reinforce each bead for my 3rd wall. Making sure I wind up coming out of 6 o'clock. Now I'm just going to turn it, follow the direction of my thread, which is counterclockwise. And I'm going to go through my final 6 o'clock for my final wall for this unit. Okay. And I have my 3 o'clock. I pick up my 12 o'clock. I go through 9 o'clock. Make sure, whoops, make sure my thread doesn't catch on anything and it lays correctly. And wind up going through my 6 o'clock again. Alright, now I'm just going to take the time to reinforce. Since this was my final wall, and this wall, I did add a bead. Making sure I come out of 6 o'clock. Alright, so now that I finished that wall, because I have no more walls to put on, I'm going to go up 3 o'clock so I can reach the ceiling. And all my beads are there, so I'm just going to go around one time to go ahead and reinforce all 4 beads. Alright, so now we've done our 90-degree turn that's parallel to our first side. So what we're going to do with this is we have 2 units for this 3rd side. We need a total of 5 because we want it to be equal to that first side. So we need to add 3 more units. So go ahead, add your 3 more units, meet me back here, and we will do our 90-degree turn. Okay? Alright, so we have our 3 sides on. We just need to put on, for our first rectangle, our final side. Okay? And just like we did before, we're going to do a 90-degree turn, and this turn is going to be parallel with this side. So we want to make sure we're coming out of this, whoops, let me go over here, that we're coming out of this side over here. And one thing that I've done is that I've actually switched over to my tail, just because, you know, at this point I'm running out of thread on the other side. I have a little bit left, and I'll be using that when we attach our first Rivoli. But I thought at this point I'll go ahead and start using the tail. So the purpose of putting your thread and dividing it in half was for this purpose. It was just to cut down on the number of times, just slightly, by how many times you're going to need to add thread, because this project will require quite a bit of thread and you'll be adding on quite a bit of thread. So this was just an opportunity to cut down on that just a little bit. Alright, so we're coming out of here. We're going to come out of here. This will be our base. Alright, so grab your materials, meet us back here, and we'll get started on our final wall for the first portion of our frame. Alright, so to make this final leg parallel to this side over here, we are going to be coming out of these 4 beads over here. So I'm just going to turn this, and we're just going to get a little bit closer. There we go. So when we look at this, we are going to be using these 4 beads as our walls, and we're going to do just like we practice on the others. I'm coming out of this bead here, and this will be my inner wall for that unit for the 90-degree angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, we're just going to go a little quicker because we've done this before. I picked up my 3 beads. I'm going to go through my 6 o'clock. And I am just going to go ahead and reinforce each and every single one of those beads. Making sure my thread doesn't catch on anything. And I'm just going to make sure I wind up going through that 6 o'clock again. Just gonna give a little tug. Make sure my beads fall into place. Follow the direction of your thread. Go to the next 6 o'clock. I'm just turning this around so I can do that and follow that. There we go. I'm going to go ahead just like we did before. So this is all just, you know, same things we've done so far. Coming out of 6 o'clock, I picked up 2 beads since I'm going clockwise and went through 3 o'clock. Going through 6 o'clock to complete the circle. Then I'm going to go ahead and repeat for reinforcement. Making sure that I come out of 6 o'clock. I'll do my best not to get caught on other threads, but again, the more threads you have going through, the harder it becomes. There we go. So I have the second wall. Follow my thread, direction of my thread for the third wall. Go into the third 6 o'clock. Pick up 2 beads. Go through the 3 o'clock. There we go. Hold this a little closer so you can see. Make sure I come out of 6 o'clock to complete the right angle weave for the wall. Then I go ahead and start reinforcing. Making sure that my last stitch, I'm coming out of 6 o'clock for that wall. That was my third wall. Then I follow the direction of my thread, and I go through the final 6 o'clock for the final wall over here. Go through 9 o'clock. pick up 12 o'clock, go through 3 o'clock, then go through 6 o'clock to complete the right angle weave. And then I reinforce that right angle weave, that final wall. And then I go through 6 o'clock for one, you know, always ending up going through 6 o'clock. Now I'm going to maneuver my way to the ceiling of that unit. So I'm going to go through 9 o'clock. Okay, I'm at the ceiling. There we go. It's a little hard to see because of the other sides. I'm going to go through all 4 of those beads on the ceiling. I'm just going to push this off to the side so you can see. One at a time. Making sure nothing gets caught. There we go. So I'm just going to hold this off to the side so you guys can see a little bit better. Hope that works. I mean, I try not to do that when I'm working, just because, you know, I try to keep my pieces as straight as possible, but I think for you guys to be able to see, I have no choice. So that's what we're gonna do. We'll deal. All right. And I just go around once, completing a full circle. Alright, now go ahead. So right now, if we look at this, alright, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have I'm sorry. We have, let me start over. We have 1, 2, and then we have one over here, 3. We only want 4 units. So we just actually have 1 more unit to put on. In this case, the ceiling of the unit we're coming out of will become our floor, just like normal. But on the opposite side here, this over here will be our ceiling. So we actually have our floor and our ceiling all already. We just have to put on the sides of each wall. Okay, so we're going to need less beads to do that. And what I'm going to do is I am actually just going to take the time to maneuver my way to that inner wall. Why? Because it will make my life a little easier. So let's go ahead and do that. And now let's put on our final unit for this rectangle, for this first portion of our frame. Alright, so we are going to be putting on our 4th unit because we have 1, 2, 3, and we're just missing here. Our ceiling of our last unit over here will become our floor, and when we use this side here, that will be our ceiling. I'm currently coming out of, let me just kind of maneuver this so you can see. I'm currently coming out of the inner 6 o'clock, so let me get a little closer. And so I'm coming out of here. And so just like we've done with everything else, we're gonna, so when we think about this, I have my first 6 o'clock, I'm missing 3 o'clock. I have 12 o'clock, which is over here. So the inner 12 o'clock on this side, and then I just need to add my 3 o'clock and then go back through 6 o'clock. So I'm coming out of 6. I'm going to pick up my 9 o'clock, go through my inner 12 o'clock. So it's my corresponding 12 o'clock to my corresponding 6 o'clock. See? Both of them are the inner, just because I'll make my life a little easier as I continue to put on the walls. So there we go. So that's, now I pick up 3 o'clock and I go back, because you always want to wind up going through 6 o'clock. I'm going through my 6 o'clock and I have my first wall. I've only gone through it once, so I'm going to reinforce everything by going through one bead at a time. So now I'm going through 9 o'clock. I'm then going through 12 o'clock. It's getting a little tight, but we can do it. It's hard to see. So I went through that 12 o'clock over here. Now I'm going to go through the 3 o'clock. And then I'm going to go through that 6 o'clock. So I always want to wind up going through that 6 o'clock again, since that's where I started. And that just completes the full circle. So you always want to think about completing the first circle. I follow the direction of my thread, okay, which is going counterclockwise for me. And so I go to 6 o'clock over here for my second wall. And in this particular case, I have the 6 o'clock, I'm missing 3 o'clock, I have 12 o'clock, and I have 9 o'clock. So just depending on the direction of your thread, you'll either be missing 9 o'clock or have 9 o'clock. You'll either be missing 3 o'clock or have 3, or either missing 3 o'clock or have 3 o'clock. So it just depends on the direction of your thread, the direction of your circle. So I'm coming out of 6 o'clock, I pick up 3 o'clock, I go through 12 o'clock. I go through my 9 o'clock. Careful to only go through one bead. Then I go through 6 o'clock. And then I go through 3 o'clock. And then 12 o'clock, because we're reinforcing, so that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm reinforcing. When I entered 3 o'clock, I began the reinforcement. And then 9 o'clock. And I want to end at 6 o'clock. So I've completed my reinforcement. Now I just turn and I go to 6 o'clock again. So I have 6 o'clock. I'm going to add 3 o'clock. I'm going to go through 12 o'clock. So this is our third wall. I'm going to go through 9 o'clock. I want to make sure I end up going through 6 o'clock for my complete right angle weave cycle or circle. There we go. And then I'm going to reinforce and make sure I wind up going through 6 o'clock to complete that full right angle weave circle. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn this, and as you can see, all the beads are there. This is the fourth and final wall, but we haven't connected those 4 beads, just like we typically have to do with our ceiling. But because we had our ceiling already and we had our floor already, we didn't need to add any beads to our final wall. So we're just going to go through it once to reinforce it. There we go. We're almost all the way around. We want to complete a full circle for the right angle weave. And there we go. So now we have our first rectangle of our frame. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and add on our first Rivoli. How exciting! Alright, so get your bezel Rivoli and meet me back here.